So I saw another extra credits video game related video that I absolutely disagreed with. This one actually came out just yesterday. And this is kind of like, I guess, a little bit of a throwback, I guess, because if you don't know, I actually made a video basically talking about one of these videos that were related to video games before that these guys made, where they, they went as far as saying, like, putting Nazis in video games for people to play is a bad thing, and all these other things, basically making it out like if you play, the Nazis in Call of Duty or something in multiplayer, there was some sort of huge problem with that and whatnot. But this one, man, this one is, of course, another video, obviously, that I disagree with, but I think it makes even dumber points at some times, actually. And, honestly, there's so much going on with this that I really just want to jump right on into this. I don't really want to waste any time. So with that being said, let's go ahead and just jump into it. Before we get any further into the video, I just want to say that nearly half of you watching have yet to subscribe. I try to post multiple videos per day to keep you entertained, so consider leaving a like to help support and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss anything. Also, all of my socials are on the screen right now, so consider leaving a follow on these for more awesome content, and also consider grabbing a shirt if you're really awesome. Now to the rest of the video.
Much of the recent conversation on orcs points out that characterizing a whole species in your game as ugly, warlike, and malevolent might be harmful to real-world groups regularly mischaracterized as ugly, warlike, and malevolent.
So while bringing up the possibility of races considered evil in video games being used to represent real-world people of color or races, you show a brown woman on the screen next to this massive troll warlord, whatever you really want to call it, but isn't this a video that's supposed to bring light to how harmful these things are? Because me personally, right, when I'm playing a game, I never really think of, like, the bad person in the video game as, like, a real-world representation of any people at all. At least in most situations, right? Especially if it's like some sort of orc or something like that, right? I'm not sitting here like, this really reminds me of insert race. Like, it just doesn't happen. But it happened for you enough to draw this, and you see this as a possibility enough for it to have been drawn together, which I've never seen anyone else that I've ever played video games with ever have this problem either. I mean, the character and this person obviously look nothing alike, so it really just seems that your artwork comparison here is the real kind of like racist trope here. It's not really any video game design. I definitely would have reconsidered that one, fellas.
It's a common trope in speculative fiction, but especially in the context of a game, painting an entire species with the same moral brush actually weakens the entire thing. This idea that a certain subgroup, like race, nationality, or sex, has inalienable traits is called biological essentialism, or simply bioessentialism. And it's a valid way to talk about qualities like how many legs an animal has, or whether it can fly. But all too often, this concept gets misused in untrue statements, like pit bulls are a violent breed, men are more logical than women, or Asians are better at math.
What the actual fuck are you even talking about? You're comparing humans and trolls, or whatever, right? Not Asians and Caucasians. You seem to misunderstand that Asians, and realistically any race on the planet, isn't biologically different from any other race or human, at least on any noticeable scale that would make them different enough to it actually even be considered, okay? It's literally skin color. That's all it is. It's a chemical in your skin. We're all Homo sapiens, right? I know it sounds corny or whatever, but it's realistically the truth. If a story has, once again, humans and trolls, they're not the fucking same thing. They're not the same creatures. They don't have the same mental capacities. They don't have the same intentions, thought processes, anything like that. You're making a comparison between two things that are not the same when you're also then taking that comparison and comparing two things that are the same. You see the problem here? It doesn't make any fucking sense. Comparing humans and trolls to different races of humans is like... It's like, I don't know, comparing golden retrievers and Jack Russells, but then saying that, well, dogs have the same amount of nuance and character and thought design in video games behind them as elephants. It's not the fucking same, bro. It's not the same thing. It's realistically just vastly oversimplifying a non-issue to search way too deep into it to make a problem of it.
But just like in the real world, bioessentialism can present problems in fiction as well, specifically a moral one. The idea that a sapient species can inherently tend towards good or evil acts, or lawful or chaotic ones, and that moral essentialism actually undercuts the greatest strength games can bring to storytelling: the player's own power to make meaningful, interesting choices and judgments for their characters, including moral ones. So if a game's creative choices apply a moral valuation to every member of an entire species before the players even meet them, well, now that's just taking that power away from the players.
Yeah, Not every video game is meant or designed to be that complex. It doesn't have to have that much nuance to make it a good game. Sure, there's some games out there with incredible stories that are extremely layered, they're thought-provoking, they make the player make harsh decisions, make them actually, it makes you a little bit more mentally involved. Sure, those are great games, but guess what? Not every video game has to be that. Not every video game has to be put up on this fucking pinnacle of critical thinking, okay? There's video games that are simply designed to just mash buttons and shit, okay? People, believe it or not, enjoy stories being directed to them, not by them. Having a morality system in a video game like Fallout is cool, right? It brings decision-making, and it was a huge part and influence on like a game like New Vegas. But suddenly, that wouldn't really be as cool and interesting and exciting if every single video game had them. If I'm playing fucking Pac-Man and I'm thinking like, are the ghosts really the bad guys for trying to kill me repeatedly? Or are they just, trying to serve their own motive that they view as just? Guess what? Suddenly, I'm not having fucking fun. You know why? Because Pac-Man is not a game designed for that, okay? Not every video game has to have this deep, intricate, layered story that makes you think about the backgrounds of the characters. Some games are simply there to play. At the end of the day, some people are simply trying to just sit the fuck down and mash some buttons for an hour after work. Some people might be looking for deep story and decision making, which is why there's already an entire market of video games that caters to these players.
And in turn, if a group of orcs, for instance, doesn't even have a choice about their actions, are they actually evil? Because look, if a person, say, destroys a house, we call that evil because they chose to do so. But if a tornado destroys a house, well, is wind evil? No.
This might be the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard, no joke. What's the difference between these intelligent creatures capable of communication? They can make decisions, they can plan, that they use tools and technology. Pretty much everything needed to determine moral decisions and just causes and whatnot. And this, naturally occurring natural disaster with no thinking skills or even a semblance of life literally only happens under special conditions in the atmosphere. Yeah, no nuance behind that one at all, right? There's nothing that might differentiate those things. The video really just comes off as more of a, we want to sound really intelligent and socially aware of problems, instead of sparking legitimate conversation or making an actual point. It's entirely okay to think, by the way, that video games should all be nuanced and deep and developed and story-ridden and whatnot. It's fine to think that. But don't you think if people playing video games wanted that, if they wanted, to think about the complexity of the enemies that they're killing at all times, that the top-selling video games wouldn't always literally be games that completely would not function the same way with those kinds of features? Let's take a look at the top 10 best-selling games last year. Oh, last 2 Call of Duty games. Yeah, those are probably going to make me think really deep in the campaign. It's not literally just going to be explosions, Michael Bay cutscenes, and fucking shooting guns. Oh, Animal Crossing New Horizons. Yeah, that's a real thought-provoking, deep storylined game. Madden 21, a game about football. I haven't played the new Assassin's Creed, so I couldn't tell you. The Last of Us Part 2 was widely panned for the failure to project the story in the way that the audience actually expected it to be done. I did not play Ghosts of Tsushima, but I probably should. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, lots of thought-provoking content, just drifting corners. Super Mario 3D All-Stars, need I say more, and Final Fantasy VII Remade. Don't you think that maybe if the gaming community, agreed with this and, stood behind this stance and thought that this was a legitimate issue in video games, that maybe the top-selling games literally would be the most mind-numbing games?
And of course, Games Workshop made that choice to facilitate a war game where lethal violence is the only option. But then folks also saw that in the 40k novels and RPGs, which required more interesting narrative complexities, Imperial heroes have to grapple with and recognize the illogic of that creed based on their own experience.
Trying to compare a 300-page novel and a video game makes zero sense. In a video game, you can easily paint everything as evil that you kill because it's easy to make an enjoyable game doing so. In a book, you have zero choice but to add nuance and to add detail and to, make people kind of think a little bit in order to fit the natural constraints of a book. A reader is not generally going to read 400 pages of, oh, this guy was bad, so we killed him, rinse and repeat. No story, no moral question, no plot, nothing else. You're comparing 2 different mediums of art that cater mostly to 2 different groups of people, or at least 2 different intentions that groups of people have. And they're not comparable. Just think here, Lego Star Wars, okay? Pretty simple and straightforward. Lego characters, Star Wars. Very simple. The objectives in the game are clear because the audience being catered to oftentimes either needs or wants objectives in the game to be clear. It didn't make them worse games. In fact, many people who play these games, including myself, are massive fans of them. But if you read 30 Star Wars books and you watch the movie series, guess what? Suddenly plot becomes a hell of a lot more important. You can't watch the whole Star Wars series with no idea of the backstory, the characters, the moral issues being raised. But you can sit down and play LEGO Star Wars even if you've never seen the series before.
The easy answer becomes less easy. And if the goal of your game is to stop players from engaging in moral debates and just fight some bad guys, you kinda gotta say something more reliable than, "Oh, it's fine, they were all born this way."
You literally don't. It's a video game about just killing shit for the sake of it. You really don't have to go beyond that to create a good video game. I mean, like when I'm playing Call of Duty, I don't sit there and think like, I wonder if there's a morally just way to paint this Spetsnaz player I'm going up against as the good guy. I think, yeah, I kind of want to drop some fucking score streaks on this idiot and his whole team. I want 80 kills this game. When I play Grand Theft Auto, I don't sit there and think, that prostitute I just killed for my money back was simply trying to feed her family at home. She was trying to empower herself as a single woman. I sit there and I think, well, fuck it, I'll hit her with the pump shotgun and get out before the cops come. Guess what? Because not every video game needs to have you think at all times. People actively play video games to avoid thinking about shit. And that's not a problem.
I'm evil, not because of where I was born, but because of the choices I've made, such as Nazi uniforms and clan hoods. Then in fiction, we have things like the Hydra logo, a clear visual signifier, but one that denotes choice, not birth.
I think the weirdest part about all this is you're now, either directly or indirectly, I'm not sure what your intentions are, comparing two legitimate hate groups from the real world that have had horrible impacts to societies in the real world to characters denoted as evil in a fictional fucking video game. In fact, these creatures literally do not exist. How do you think that someone like Michael Donald, a black man who was jumped and viciously beaten by multiple Klansmen before being lynched from a tree in 1981, would feel if the perpetrators to his crime were compared to some fucking orcs in a fictional video game? What horrible crime did Michael Donald commit to suffer such an inhumane death? He literally was walking home from a gas station after buying cigarettes for his sister. He was chosen at random due to his skin and an ongoing case for murder against a completely different black man. Brutally fucking murdered. How do you think he would feel if his death was being indirectly compared to fictional video game characters and then being portrayed as bad? How do you think the millions of Jewish people killed by the Nazis would feel? I figure these people's last worries would be a fucking NPC race in a video game.
And a good example of a series getting better and better at this over time is Mass Effect. Because in the first game, Commander Shepard never meets a nice Batarian or a fun Geth. But then, spoiler alert, most of these evil species turn out to be as complex and interesting as the human ones as the trilogy progresses.
Yeah, because the last Mass Effect game was such a critical and commercial success, the fans and critics alike loved that game. It was totally credited for the amazing product that it was. Definitely the example that all good video games should be following. Maybe if they focused on making Mass Effect Andromeda an actually good title instead of focusing on, well, not all the bad guys are actually bad, then the game would have made sense to use as a positive example. This game could be the most diverse, thought-provoking game of all time, right? Like, just making me fucking big brain, okay? And I still would rather not play it. In fact, I got this game for my birthday, and it's by far the worst birthday gift I've ever gotten. I actually would have rather gotten nothing that year than to have been disappointed.
But we can solve that problem by following our best creative instincts to diversify, deepen, and complicate the worlds we create and its denizens. This way, players won't be incentivized to make snap judgments about our game's orcs or aliens or undead based on moral absolutes or body types.
Look, if you're the type of dipshit to play a video game and you see some fat trolls as the bad guy, and then that somehow implants into your mind and you become racist, or hateful in any way in real life, then I'm simply going to make the argument that you're too stupid to help, and at that rate, you were already racist and hateful to begin with, you just weren't showing it. Video game characters do not contribute to real life issues, and they don't have to. You don't have to make a moral stand, you don't have to do any of that shit, it's a video game. These are already underlined issues that these people would have, okay? It really just reminds me of the video games cause violence argument in all reality, Well, what if your kid sees someone get shot in a video game and they might, go and shoot somebody in real life? It's the same fucking thing, except you're taking keywords and replacing them. Instead of, what if your kid sees handgun in video game and becomes criminal? It's essentially just, what if your kid sees orcs in video game and becomes a fucking racist? Like, what? When I play Grand Theft Auto, let's say I shoot it out with the cops, who are usually painted as a group of antagonists in that game. I don't sit there and think, wow, I really hate all police now. ACAB, no. Don't you think maybe an unarmed person being fucking shot in the streets would be an actual reason for people to, you know, maybe go down that road of thinking? Because that's happened hundreds of times in the last few years here in the United States, so at the end of the day, we're not all fucking idiotic, okay? People who play video games, I feel like for the vast majority of them, have the ability to differentiate video games from reality, okay? I know the hip thing to do now is to pretend you care about these issues in society, but if you know nothing about them or you don't give a fuck about them, don't say anything, because then you end up making these kinds of comparisons and it just looks fucking stupid. There's been a spike in hate crimes against Asian Americans, including an elderly Asian woman being beaten in the streets of New York just a few days ago, caught on footage, literally for no fucking reason whatsoever, to the point that the federal government is now responding, okay? But you're insinuating that the race issues might be more or less because someone saw a troll in a video game and made a bad comparison. I'm sorry, I'm just not buying that shit. And if anything, this kind of stupid shit where we're trying to shift some of the blame for hateful behavior back onto video games is just not it, man. So with that being said, though, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel, follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus. Make sure to check out Shop Opti down below. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, not racist, because I saw some fucking orcs in a video game, and signing out.